I think some of the Panthers' historic unwillingness to address wide receiver in the first round until recently has to be a little bit about the coaches, right? Like Seifert was certainly on the downside of his career when he came here, but until
just skip Seifert, because
well, but here's the thing: until Frank Reich, who also you could just skip, until Frank Reich and now Dave Canales, like that was their last offensive-minded head coach, right?
Yes.
It wasn't Fox was a DC.
Capers was their first coach, defensive coordinator. John Fox, defense.
Yep.
Correct. Ron Rivera,
Yeah, Ron Rivera. It's been a largely defensive-minded thing. Yes. I do, before we get into what is being said about Tet and what that then says about XL, I did find a stat that I found really interesting. Do you realize that last year, targeting XL, whether he made the catch or not, targeting XL actually made Bryce appreciably better in terms of quarterback rating last year. His quarterback rating overall was around a 79, 80. When he was targeting XL, throws to XL, he had a passer rating of 89.4. So I would say, imagine if XL could eliminate the drops, or if XL could come along even just a little bit. In terms of production, Pro Football Focus had him ranked rightfully 92nd out of 98 eligible wide receivers. So look, if you could just get that up to the low 70s, you're making a major difference in the outcome of your quarterback.
I wanted to it allowed me to sort of like reframe Xavier, because I actually, it inspired me because I was reading a piece about him and how positive, like Bryce praising him for how positive he's been throughout all of this, and how he's still such a positive force in that locker room for everybody, and just lifts everybody up, and the way he just keeps working, and the way he's the first one to encourage Tetairoa, like when he makes a big catch and stuff like that. Like, how do you not love that? Honestly, and it kind of led me to just like almost get to a place with him where I was with Bryce a little bit, where I was like, look, maybe he won't be good. I don't know, but I'll be really happy for him if he is. And just kind of let go a little bit. And I think having Tetairoa around, if nothing else, I think it just takes some pressure off of him.
Well, I think that last year, between Thielen, between the emergence of Coker, between honestly bringing in Deontay Johnson at the very beginning of the year, XL always seems like a positive locker room presence. So don't mistake what I'm saying here. I think he was always going to be a good locker room guy, a fun character to have on this team, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think, like, from the get-go last year, his targets from what they were at South Carolina fell off in a huge way, and that can either be humbling or it can be tone-setting for you. And XL seems to have the attitude that it's tone-setting. Right now, he is a 4 to 5 targets a game kind of guy, and that means there is room for Tetairoa McMillan to come in and also thrive. There is room for Hunter Renfrow to come in and get the targets he needs to see if he can make this roster or not. Like, it just seems to me that XL did a really good job of accepting what reality is. Doesn't mean he accepts that's what it's going to be forever, but accepting what reality is in the place where he is working from right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I just think, like, it's got to be, like I said, it takes some pressure off having Tetairoa there, because Tetairoa's a higher draft pick than him too. Yep. So like you automatically have that. And then also I was reading too, and I don't know how much. I knew he had at least one nagging injury. I don't think I knew about the wrist thing, or at least I didn't retain that knowledge. And so that's gotta, I mean, that gives me a little grace for his catching as well. For his ability, because
you never really know what to make of camp injuries, but he did have an ankle thing that held him out of camp last year for 2 weeks, I think. Or at least held him out of contact.
It was the ankle and the wrist, I believe, were like the two things that were, but the wrist in particular, like that's obviously kind of important for guys that are catching the football. And so like for me, I was like, okay, like I'm going to give him a little grace. And so I feel like for me, even with Xavier, as much as I love him off the field, like I would feel this rage rise up in my heart when he would drop a very easy catch, like at least easy for me to say, right? But like in a very easy football, like. And I'm like,
look, as somebody that had so much experience watching him and creating content about him while he was in the SEC, and seeing him make those catches and turn them into big run after catch plays, like I was right there with you. It was frustrating because I'd seen him complete the play before, and you always hate to see that. I had this feeling with Bryce. I've had this feeling with a lot of guys that I thought coming out of college would just translate perfectly to the NFL. Were they so reliant on the difference in talent between them and the other guy at the last level that they were not prepared for the step up? I think that is true with Bryce. I don't know that is necessarily true.
I agree
with XL.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he just had a lot of things that I think it was a lot. Well, he does have one similarity with Bryce, and then I think a lot of it was mental when he had issues. It was just he was in his head a little bit, and
I would imagine even changing the coaches completely. There was probably still a black cloud. Call it toxicity if you want it. I think of it more like Eeyore's black cloud over the locker room at the start of training camp last year.
And that's got to be hard on a guy that wants to thrive in like positivity, like as much as he does. But I just like what I love about him is like a lot of wide receivers would be sulky right now, and we would be like, we get it. You know what I mean? Like we would be like, yeah, I would be too, or whatever. But he's turned it into a positive. Like he has taken something crappy that has happened to him on paper and then just said, I'm going to make this into the best possible thing for me that I can. I think that's really admirable. And instead of being mad at him, if he drops the football, I'm going to be sad or like because of what it's done to my team. I'm just going to be sad for him and hope that he can make the next play. And that's healing for me. So thank you, Xavier, for allowing me to free myself there.
It's been interesting. You mentioned the fun off the field that he has had this offseason where he has been front and center locally at the Canes, nationally at the Kentucky Derby.
I love that.
Oh, me too. But at the same time, it's been really interesting because literally since the day Tetairoa McMillan got drafted, there have been so many profiles of the guy's work ethic, of his relationship with Bryce Young, of how big of a fan Bryce Young was of him before they even played together, that I wondered how much of it was weighing on XL. But this week, I noticed a couple things, and they were in Joe Person's piece at The Athletic.
That's what I read, is the one about Xavier on The Athletic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, have you seen the one about Tetairoa McMillan that came out today on The Athletic?
Oh, no, not yet.
So,
no,
okay, so there are a couple of quotes in here. First of all, also a story that came out yesterday, that would be Sunday the 1st, on the Panthers website. Do you realize the Panthers came close to trading out of number 8 because the Rams wanted Tetairoa McMillan? And how close it got, Dan Morgan makes it sound like it did not come particularly close, but the Panthers basically said if the Rams wanted to come up from 24 to 8, they wanted a, quote, boatload of picks. And so you got to imagine that's 24. That's probably next year's one. That's probably
maybe
at least
2 years, maybe the next 2 years one as well.
Yeah, I mean, either the next 2 years one, or I mean, what if it is a 1? You already had their 2 this year. What if it is this year's 1, this year's 3, next year's 1, and next year's 3, or next year's 2 even? Like there was probably such a big asking price that like Dan Morgan makes it sound like, or at least he says outright, he was relieved when the Rams said no. So it had to be because they were so sold on McMillan being the guy that they needed. I mean, it sounds like exactly what it probably was. Like you had to have a package coming back that if you were going to lose out on Tetairoa McMillan, you could still sleep comfortably at night knowing you were going to be okay for a while.
He's probably, I believe him about that, like being relieved, but at the same time, there has to be, I would feel at least some measure as a fan, even of like, not vindication because it's not against the Bears, but like it would be like, okay, cool.
But now it would be like a restocking the shelves kind of thing, right?
Well, and it's like a fleecing the other way. It's like, and look, good for you, Dan. Know your worth, sweetie. Okay, let's know our worth. Let's not devalue ourselves. You're okay. You want that pick? You better give me like a bunch of stuff. And the Rams were like, no. And he was like, cool. Then we're gonna take the pick and we're gonna get your guy. Yeah. So whatever. Either way, we're good.
So here's what is said about Tetairoa McMillan in that Athletic piece. This is what Bryce Young had to say in describing him. Super smooth, has supernatural hands, great catch radius, super quarterback friendly, which is always nice. The wide receivers coach, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head, praised Tetairoa McMillan by saying he makes no false steps, no bad steps, and we have a true hands catcher.
Don't tease me with a good time.
I don't want to say that, well, obviously they are comparing one to the other, but especially the no false steps, the true hands catcher, that does sound like you are specifically talking about some of the problems that XL had last year. Like, we saw him drop balls because they hit him in the chest and he did not close them in quickly. We saw him not be where he was supposed to be on timing routes for both Bryce and for Andy Dalton. Like I said, I don't think it was intended that way. It's just hard not to compare and contrast what we saw last year in XL's rookie season to the hype around Tetairoa McMillan going into his.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I wanted to look up his name because I think he deserves credit. Whereas like some of the Panthers coaches, you know, you could take or leave in terms of that. But considering what he was able to do last year with guys like Coker and whoever else, it's Rob Moore is their wide receivers coach. So I just think he deserves a shout out. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I didn't like, I know you're not saying that it was like a shot at Xavier or anything about the hands thing. I think, but it's obviously like at this point, just factually, it's sort of a need.
I mean, it could be a shot, right? Like, you don't mean it as a shot, but if you are XL and you know what your problems were last year, it's probably hard not to take it as like oh, they're talking about me.
I get the feeling, and I don't mean this to be dismissive towards him at all, but I don't think I don't see how you could be this positive about life in general and certainly the sport of football if you're reading that deeply into everything. And so I would imagine even if he saw that quote, I think he would be like, if he's not offended about the drafting of the guy in the first place and is like in practice hyping him up and everything, I doubt that he's going to be like, wait, he's saying he has great hands? That's a shot at me.
You don't think there could be a little bit of Kelvin Gemstone in him of very flashy in front of the cameras, but very sad away from them?
Oh, God, no, not Kelvin. Oh, well, the thing about Kelvin though is that like a lot of what he was doing for the cameras was not rooted, at least for most of the series, in authenticity.
Oh, sure.
Whereas Xavier is completely whoever the hell he is at all times. Like that is not an act he's putting on. He's not like like that's just Xavier. Like people just want to turn the camera on him because he's like people naturally find him funny and charming. And so yeah, I think I would agree if it were more the other way. But he's just out there being himself, man. I don't think he's out there reading too deep into stuff because you make yourself crazy that way. Let's be honest.
You think Panthers fans, especially like Panthers fans that are from up this way, right, where you're more often paying attention to the ACC than the SEC, maybe you didn't know much about XL in college, do you think the first glimpse we got of what he was as a character was with the fan at training camp last year brought him the handmade leather cowboy hat with the Panthers logo on one side and the Gamecocks logo on the other, and there's video of him not understanding why he couldn't wear that out on the field? Like, is that maybe the first glimpse we all got of like, we've got a guy?
The first thing I remember is not long after he was drafted because someone put up a video of him talking. And I was like, what? I was literally like, I'm from here, like as in the South. And I got like every other word at best of that. I'm going to need to rewind it and, turn up the volume. And that was my first sort of taste of that. But I see what you're saying.
Do we believe XL's personality inspired Tet McMillan's pose in his rookie photo? That sort of Vogue win over the crowd shot.
I don't remember what generation they're in right now. What generation are those dudes in?
Are they alphas? Yeah, alphas, right?
Oh, maybe. But either way, I think that might just be like a generation. Like sometimes those guys do stuff that I'm like, huh. Like that's not a thing I'm used to seeing football players do in a serious way.